Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our CPS Energy rate proposal town hall meeting. I'm Councilman Mario Bravo from City Council District 1, and we have here CPS Energy interim CEO Rudy Garza, and then CPS Energy Chief Financial Officer Cory Kaczynski. And so the reason we're here today is to be able to share with you CPS Energy's proposal for a rate increase. We're going to allow them to give a presentation, make their case, and then we're going to be able to take some Q&A and get your input before the vote tomorrow in City Council. That's going to be at 9 a.m. and you should be able to watch that online as well. But first, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Interim CEO Rudy Garza. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilman Bravo, for giving us a chance to be here with you today. I also want to thank all those who are with us tonight from both Council District 1 and certainly I know that Council District 3, Phyllis Villagran's district, was also asked to join us for those of you who may not have been able to join the session with D2 and D3 earlier this week. I look forward to answering your questions. In particular, I know that there were some folks from the neighborhood of Mission Del Lago. I know you all had a really rough experience during the winter storm, and I'll be here to answer some of those questions this evening as well. So welcome anyone from District 3 who is on the online with us today, and and anybody else from the community who's joining us. I want to begin by just acknowledging this is actually the 9th town hall we have done. We did one combined event as well as another. I think this is the 41st event we have done overall throughout the community. I think we've been able to reach somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 customers over that time period. And then we have sent out a couple of different text messages, voicemails, emails, and direct letters to customers trying to explain our request. I do not anticipate ever getting anybody to feel real good about a rate increase of any kind. I know that times are tough. I know we've had some really difficult circumstances over the last couple of years, and we certainly acknowledge that. The work that we've done to pare this rate increase back to exactly what we need in the short term, while we make some really important decisions about a lot of things in the near future. We got to decide how we're going to generate power and deal with our spruce coal plants that the community has been interested in us transitioning away from. How are we going to design rates to take care of those that are bearing high utility burdens in our community? How are we going to continue to increase transparency and deal with the accountability that the community expects out of us? These are all things that have been top of mind as part of this conversation. And I just want to thank the councilman and all the council members and the mayor and city staff for the diligence in this conversation. The reason we're here now is it's been 8 years since our last rate increase. And as anybody can understand in your own budgets, costs have gone up over that time period pretty significantly. We're paying today's cost to serve our customers. We're collecting yesterday's revenue, and that's a pretty sizable gap in what we need to serve our community. And so this increase, and Cory, we'll talk about it here in a second, is really in two parts. There's a 3.85% base rate increase. Basically, your energy charge will go up to raise roughly $73 million. That will pay for a number of critical investments that will go right back into the service that we provide you. And then there's a second element regarding dealing with fuel. We spent $1 billion during that week, Winter Storm Uri. We spend $1 billion on a normal year annually for fuel. We're disputing almost $600 million of that, but there's roughly $418 million that we do need to collect from our customers. That we're creating an accounting mechanism to spread that out over 25 years and to thoughtfully try to collect that from our
Oh,
customers
myself?
on fuel that's been paid. To date, we haven't charged anything above, what we would normally pay for fuel. And so, we've got to do something on that issue by the end of the year to make sure that, we don't see, high shock on our, our rates for our customers because we didn't do it thoughtfully. And so, that's the need. Cory will talk to you about what the bill impact will be. I want to acknowledge, I know it's never a good time, and I don't expect any of our customers to feel real good about the fact that we're asking for what will amount for residential customers to, on average, $5.10 a month extra. But I can promise you that every bit of that will ensure that CPS Energy is able to continue to provide the service that you expect out of us. And we know that, we work really hard. Our 3,000 employees work really hard every day to make sure that you have the energy that you need for your homes and for your businesses. And so, our responsibility is to make sure that when we see some financial indicators that are telling us that we're stressed, that we're thoughtful, and we have a responsibility to our owner, the city of San Antonio, to come forward and have a thoughtful conversation about that. And so that will happen tomorrow. I want to say that, we have gone through a very, very deliberative process, and I just want to thank everybody who's been involved, because I know tomorrow's vote will be difficult. I know the conversation will be challenging. We're ready to have that conversation with the community and move forward in a way that allows us to do our job for you. So with that, I'm going to stop there, and I will turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Cory Kuchinsky.
All right, very good. Thank you, Rudy, and thank you, Councilman. It's great to be here and be able to talk to your constituents. We should have up on the screen some slides. I'm confirming that they can see it as well. Yep, okay, great. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll talk about a number of things today. We'll hit on all the key elements Rudy talked about in terms of this rate request, what it's for, what that dollar impact is going to look like. So let's dive right in. So one of the first things that we talk about to customers before we really dive into it is talk about how we're preparing for this next winter season. There's a lot of things that we're doing. Rudy touched on them, and for those who got on a little bit later, I'm going to spend a little bit of time here talking through these different 6 elements. The first one we talk about is fighting for our customers, and as Rudy alluded to, specifically in terms of the fuel that we were charged for that week in February, we're disputing almost $600 million of that. What that means is we haven't paid any of that, and we are in the courts fighting, for that, because we believe, in simplest, plainest terms, it's price gouging of one business to another business. So none of that's included in this request. The other 2 items, though, are things that we can control around improving our grid and improving our infrastructure. So let's talk about first what we can control in terms of our power plants. We have done a lot of work this summer, and we have in this rate request planned additional dollars for kind of ongoing improvements. Specifically, it's the type of stuff you'd want to hear from us. It's improved weatherization of those power plants, the pipes that may freeze. Our power plants were built for the hot summer, and so it's designed to have free airflow. And so when you got to prepare for the complete opposite, it requires a different type of investment that you don't typically see here in the Deep South. And so we've put those improvements in. We've brought an independent third party to look at those improvements as well and validate them. The other big thing that we can do is in terms of our natural gas storage supply. Typically, the history would not have dictated the amount of supply needed for anywhere in San Antonio or in the South. So what we've done this year is increased our natural gas storage ability and how much we can pull out of storage. And so that's a significant improvement as well. And one of the other things we did that was significant was moving our regular maintenance on our power plants out of the winter season. So, you take a car in for a normal oil change, whatever, we do similar work on our power plants. And typically winter's a good time to get them serviced so they're ready for the summer. We moved all of those outages up into the summer and fall, so that we'll have every piece of generation ready to go for those cold months. So want to assure those listening, these are some of the short-term steps we've done from the power generation side. The other side is around managing the outage. What we can't control is how much the state of Texas tells us we need to reduce our load here in San Antonio. They tell us a number, and we got to manage the whole city. So we can't control that. But what we can control is how we distribute those outages amongst our customers. And so we have 600 plus circuits around this city. What we did in anticipating another potential Uri, which was nearly 5 times larger than what we've ever seen historically, is added an additional third of our system circuits that can be rotated. And so what this means is we can better share the burden of being out for 15 to 30 minutes and then back on for several hours, much like you would previously expect from a typical outage, as opposed to being out for days, much like I was for almost 4 consecutive days. So we want a better experience, and that's one thing that we can control. So we made a short-term change here, but there's going to be additional investment as part of this request as well to enhance that capability, and I'll speak more to that as well. The other items that are worth noting are around our collaboration with our sister utility in the city, and just broadly communicating to our customers. So we have taken a number of steps to partner with SAWS, understand their critical pumping stations, where those are at, and if in a worst case situation we manage through another winter storm similar to the size of Uri, we'll ensure that we'll work with SAWS to ensure those critical pumping stations don't lead to any issues with water pressure that we saw this last winter. And then from a communication to our customer standpoint, Rudy has talked about this at length, and we clearly recognize we want to do a better job, need to do a better job. So we've done some short-term steps here in this summer to ensure that we can get proactive texts out to all of our customers in short order, send kind of early messages days in advance if something's occurring, and partnering with our city leadership as well to ensure that there's a cohesive message coming from SAWS, CPS, and the city collectively on whatever the emergency may be. So there's all that said, there's still a lot of investment in technology that's part of this request as well that'll help long-term improve the systems we have to communicate to our customers. So I spent a lot of time on this slide because we get a lot of questions about how we're prepared for winter storm, how those dollars that we're planning to spend intersect in that, because we understand that the experience was significant. Okay, so this next slide here, as Rudy mentioned, it's been about 8 years since our last rate request. This takes a step back to kind of look at what's changed over that 8 years. It's just kind of for context. One of the things that Rudy did mention, though, was the effort that our men and women at CPS Energy have taken over the last decade, really, to try and manage expenses. We've pulled out almost $900 million of cost over that time. That's come from a variety of different things. A lot of them were operational savings that our employees have had found over the years to reduce costs. A lot of it was through refinancing of our debt. We constantly talk about financial strength as a motivator for ensuring or for having a rate request that supports healthy financials, because it means that we can borrow at affordable interest rates, which ultimately, from a customer perspective, we care about, because the lower our interest rate, the more affordable our bills are, and every dollar we do raise goes towards investment into our system, as opposed to just paying interest to bondholders in New York or Wall Street or wherever. So it keeps the money here at home. And so that's where a lot of the savings has come from. But a lot's changed in terms of San Antonio. The growth in San Antonio has been significant. We've all seen it. We've grown almost 125,000 electric customers in the last 8 years, and I think it's 36,000 gas customers over that time, which is significant. And that's necessitated a lot of investment. And as Rudy mentioned earlier, the investment that we've been making in the community has been at today's dollars, what it costs us for the poles, the wires, any of the inputs to do our maintenance or to set up new customers. But our rates that we're recovering were based on what costs were 8 years ago. And that's okay if we're able to pull out costs from our cost structure. But at some point, that pressure leads us to conversations like we're having today about needing some additional funds. Plus, there's also been a lot of change in terms of technology and the risk around technology. A lot of our systems, which is common in utilities, is decades old and require a lot of investment over the next 5 years. Plus, the risk around cyber risk has grown exponentially over the last 8 years. And because we are critical infrastructure to San Antonio and critical infrastructure to the state, there are other investments we need to make sure of around that. So that's just a little bit of context to help set the stage for the requests that we're talking about. As Rudy alluded to, and if you're just joining us, I'll say it again, we're requesting two parts of this proposal. One is the base rate increase that you see on the slide here of 3.85%. That's going to generate about $73 million of annual revenue. And for context, that's on a projected overall revenue of $2.9 billion. So it's kind of small relative to our entire budget, but $73 million is significant. And I'll speak to the components of where those incremental dollars would go in a second. The thing to note too, the other question we get a lot is, well, when would it be effective? Well, we're recommending it be effective on March 1st. So even though the vote City Council will be on Thursday of this week, we're not going to implement it until the 1st of March. So the next slide, I believe, I'll touch on this first. We've had a lot of conversations with our board, with the Rate Advisory Committee, with the Citizens Advisory Committee, our community and council around utility burden and equity. And we recognize this as a key discussion point, a key policy item that we need to continue to have conversations with our community to address long-term structurally. But again, because our need is fairly pressing, what we've done kind of in the near term is say, okay, for those customers who are most in need, who qualify for our affordability discount program, it's an income-based program, we're going to do a couple of things. Number one, the rate increase that I just pointed to on the previous slide, we are going to effectively kind of wipe that away through this affordability discount by increasing the discount from $12.30 to $16.14. So that bill impact that would come from that 3.85%, we want to make sure that that's not an incremental burden to anyone who is already in need or of our assistance. The second thing we want to do is expand the program. We recognize in our community there are probably more folks that can qualify for our program than are actually signed up for our program. So one of the recommendations built into this request is to increase enrollment by 14,000 customers, which will bring the program size to 65,000 customers. So that is one of our initial things we want to do to address that issue, but recognizing we're going to have longer policy conversations with our Rate Advisory Committee and our Board of Trustees and ultimately with City Council. The other thing to note for customers who are watching is that before Thanksgiving, City Council did a great thing. They voted on approving $20 million of federal funding that could be applied to utility bills. So thank you, Councilman, for participating in that. That contribution to that $20 million will go to help pay down past due accounts for customers who also would qualify for this affordability discount program. So if you qualify for this discount, we also have a program, again, that was being funded through the federal funds that the city gave us to pay down your past due accounts. So please do look into that. You can call us 353-2222. But those are the things we're doing for those, recognizing in our community we have folks that that require that assistance, and we want to be conscious of that as we go forward with this rate request. Okay, so what are we using the money for? So on this slide, you can see how we've broken out the incremental $73 million into 4 buckets. That first bucket, it says infrastructure resiliency, about $31 million. Now this is investment in the critical items that I mentioned earlier in terms of making sure our power plants are ready to go for extreme weather, making sure that our distribution network is robust enough and resilient enough to be prepared for events. But Rudy, jump in.
Well, just before you go on to the other things that we're talking about investing in, if you're on the line from Mission Del Lago, your experience during Winter Storm Uri was not unlike a lot of large neighborhoods like Mission Del Lago. You're a big neighborhood. When we were trying to bring your power back up, because of the size of the neighborhood, everybody's heaters would kick on. and it would overload the system and cause the system to come right back down again. So that's what was causing your minute, few seconds on, and then you'd be out again scenario. And I remember very clearly it was on Wednesday when then Councilwoman Rebecca Villagran, was asking questions of myself and our previous CEO at the council meeting, that I got involved to take a closer look at that particular neighborhood. She had done a lot of work to try to get a warming center set up right there in the neighborhood, which was great. And I think by the next day, we figured out what was going on. We were able to break up the neighborhood into a few different pieces, and we were able to bring you back up at a time. What Cory's talking about in terms of the investment in our distribution, in our wire system, is to put devices out into these really large neighborhoods to be able to do that breakup automatically and be quicker to respond. We actually had to send troublemen out to open switches manually and to do some things to be able to address what was going on out there. But this investment will actually allow that process to happen, in a more automated fashion. We hit a button in a control room and we're able to address that situation. So for that particular neighborhood, when you want to know why it happened because of the size of your neighborhood. And this investment in infrastructure resiliency is going to help ensure we're able to deal with that going forward. Go ahead, Cory.
Yeah, thank you, Rudy. Great punctuation on that point there. The other elements, will move on to technology. I mentioned that much of our technology is quite old. Some of it, in the case of our kind of back office technology that helps our customer service, interfacing with you as a customer when you call, our billing systems, all that's over 20 years old. And if you think of technology that just you and I used 20 years ago, imagine a utility still using that. So over the next 5 years, we have a plan in place to go through an upgrade of that system, which will be pretty significant. And we're beginning that investment, here with these incremental dollars. And then obviously additional funds for growth. The city over the last 2 years has seen faster customer growth than it had the 6 before it, which was already pretty healthy. And that growth does a couple things, not just new customers. I mean, there's ongoing maintenance you got to do throughout the city as we kind of grow in all parts. And the last portion of this incremental investment, is going towards supporting our people. Rudy has mentioned a lot throughout the last handful of weeks and months that we can't do our business without enough employees to deliver on the service and the reliability and resiliency that this community deserves. We have nearly 400 open vacant positions. Part of that's driven by the fact that, like many companies, we have a lot of folks eligible for retirement that have just retired. And the other element was, we were on a hiring freeze all through COVID as well. Again, trying to be responsible and manage costs. But at some point, the growth didn't stop. And so in order to serve our customers, we need to get back on that investment into our people to maintain the ones that we have and continue to hire the folks. And we're talking about folks like engineers, frontline folks, transmission operators, distribution operators. Those are the types of skills and roles that are being funded through this request. And so there's more on the page here. I won't read everything, but we'll have this available to anyone who wants it, and we can answer more questions later. So I mentioned there were 2 parts of this request. So the second part of it is what Rudy alluded to at the beginning in his opening comments. And again, for those just joining, I'll restate the numbers. We were effectively billed a little over $1 billion in fuel for the winter storm every week. Now, of that, what we were billed, we hired an independent third party to look at the event that occurred and give us some insight as to, okay, we recognize this was an event where supply was in short demand and demand was high, and prices will probably go up. What is an amount that is reasonable? And so through that analysis, ultimately, what's come up, you see it on the screen here, is $418 million of that, a little over $1 billion, is what CPS Energy has paid, the money going out the door, for that fuel. What we haven't done is begun any recovery of that for our customers yet. And so what we're actually asking the board and city council on Thursday to do is for them to approve a tool that actually allows us to recover from our customers that $418 million slowly over time. Because right now we actually don't have a legal mechanism to do that. And we, as Rudy said, $418 million is nearly half of what an annual fuel budget would be in a given year. And if you just think about what it means, if I was going to recover it, in the next month from our customers would be having thousands of dollar bills or more. And we just didn't think that was right. And so we're recommending that we spread this cost over 25 years. And in that instance, for an average residential and electric customer, that's about $1.26 per month that you'll see on your. It'll be built into the fuel adjustment component of your bill. And so, and I'll reiterate, as it says on the slide, the $587 million that we are disputing, that's money that has not gone out the door from CPS Energy. And most importantly, it is not money that we are recovering from our customers yet. We're going to fight that out in the legal system as best we can to ensure that, we don't have to pay for what we think is, egregious costs. So on the next slide here, it puts the two components together. So this is probably the most, important slide if you want to know, okay, how's it impacting my bill? The first part of the proposal is that top line that says base rate increase, and that $3.84 is the bill impact that you'd see from that component. As I mentioned earlier, for customers who qualify for the affordability discount, that $3.84 would not impact you if you qualify, because we will increase the discount, so thereby you wouldn't be impacted by it. Now, the second component is the Winter Storm Uri cost. That's $1.26 I just mentioned. And that is something shared by all customers, but obviously it's smaller in size. And likely over time, that amount can go down as we add more customers to our system, but in the near term, that's the bill impact. When you add it together, that's about $5.10 per month that you can expect for if you're an electric and gas customer. Now, on this one, I want to take a moment. I spoke about one program for our customers who need assistance, the Affordability Discount Program, but it's worth noting that we have many programs for our customers. I'll just rattle off a few of them here. There's a senior citizen billing program, critical care. We talk about this a lot. If you are a customer that has some medical equipment for life-sustaining reasons or needs, please let us know. Call us at 353-2222. Let us know so that we can mark on your account that you are one of these customers. So in the event we have to face another extreme weather situation and we're told by the state that we need to start reducing the load in San Antonio, we can identify who you are and ensure that either your power stays on, or we can make sure that you have accommodations to ensure that you remain safe. And so that's a great program, but we need to know who you are. And if you don't call us, we won't know. So please do give us a call. And then other great programs. Rudy often talks about being on the I think it's the budget billing program, where you get the same amount every month. This is a great tool for folks that don't want to deal with the volatility in summer months. My bills are high, then they get lower in the off months. Well, we'll look at your average over the course of a year, and this way you can get kind of flat billing at every month throughout the course of the year, and we'll do an annual reconciliation as we reset you for next year. So a lot of programs to go online to check out. I won't go through all of them, but we do want you to know that we have a lot of resources here at CPS Energy, probably more than you find in other cities. And so please do reach out. In the event there are businesses listening to this town hall, want to note what the bill impact would look like, including the winter storm for them. You can see outlined on the slide the various electric groups of customers, all the way from small businesses to super large businesses. And you can see the bill impact is still within the 3.8% bill impact for those customers. And to give you order of magnitude, you can see the size of those bill impacts as well. What I want to mention before I actually go to this slide is talk about what we have online, recognizing that those listening probably aren't the average customer in terms of what you use from a bill perspective. If you go to cpsenergy.com/rate case, you will find on there a lot of the information that I'm talking about, but you will also find a tool on there that's our bill estimator. Now that's really cool. We get a lot of questions. Hey, what is my bill impact if I use this? Well, now you have a tool online. You can go in and put what your usage is for whatever month you want to look at, and you can kind of customize kind of what the view would look like around a bill impact. And this is true for residential customers. And if you're a business listening, a commercial or industrial customer, that tool is available to you as well. So I'll mention again, it's at cpsenergy.com/rate case. So on the next slide here is really just an outline of where we are from a timeline perspective. So just going top to bottom, for those that don't know, we have a rate advisory committee that is started up this summer. It's appointed, it's a combination of folks appointed either by city council members and by our board of trustees. And so it's a 20-person committee. We have spent a lot of time with them, educating them on how our rates are set and things of that nature. And we took to them our rate proposal, and they took a vote in mid-December. And by a vote of 12-6, they voted to support our proposal, and getting their input was important. And I think a lot of the work we've done in terms of listening to the committee about rate equity and things of that nature, we took into account as we made this proposal. And then the Citizens Advisory Committee, which has been set up for over 25 years, also is made up of folks that have been appointed by City Council and some at-large members as well. We did something similar with them, and by a unanimous vote, they voted to support our proposal for both the base rate increase and the Winter Storm Uri. The third item on here was our Board of Trustees. We took to them on Monday of this week our proposal, and they voted by 5-0 to support this proposal, which what that officially does is now allow us to go over to City Council and take the proposal there for them to then take a vote on it. And that's going to be set for Thursday, tomorrow, at City Council at 9 a.m. And I believe you can live stream it as well on the city's website for that discussion. So all of these discussions have been very robust. As Rudy mentioned, we have done 40 plus different events around the community. We will answer anyone's questions, that have them. Yeah, and the last slide here is really just some information on where you can find info on our assistance programs, that bill estimator that I mentioned earlier. That's the website, and things of that nature. And I believe that is my last slide. So, Councilman, I will turn it back over to you. That's the end of our remarks, and Rudy and I are here to answer any questions you or your constituents may have.
Thank you very much, Cory. So for all of our listeners who tuned in, that's definitely a lot to digest, but I want to frame the situation in other terms. And so one of the things I'm looking at is in the last rate increase that we received from CPS Energy was in late 2013. It was implemented in February 2014. And so it's been 8 years?
8 years, yes, sir.
8 years, right? And so I wanted to compare that rate to, if that rate had been tied to inflation, to see where would we be right now. Because over the last 8 years, we've seen a lot of inflation. We've seen the cost of milk go up. We've seen the cost of eggs go up, the cost of bread go up. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually compiles this data. And they create what's called a basket of goods, and they put it together and they look at how much they have this consumer price index, and they say how much have the cost of goods gone up. And since the last rate increase, the cost of goods has gone up 18.75%. And a lot of that was just in the month of December. And so we've seen the cost of a lot of things go up over the pandemic. We've seen the price of construction goods like plywood go way up. And you've also seen the cost of labor go up. You've seen announcements from USAA that their new minimum wage for their staff is $21 an hour. And we've seen Frostbank, I think, went from $15 an hour. They just announced their new minimum wage is $21 an hour. Just before the pandemic, we had Via was paying their bus drivers $17.50 an hour. They're now paying $21 an hour for their bus drivers. And so one way to look at this is nobody wants a rate increase right now. I don't want to pay more. I don't know. I have never met anybody who wants to pay more for their electricity bill. But we also have to think about how CPS Energy, it's not us versus them. We own CPS Energy, and what's good for CPS Energy is good for the city of San Antonio. What's good for the city of San Antonio is good for CPS Energy. And so we have to look at it from that framework. And we have to think about how, when I think about the expenses at CPS Energy, I'm not just looking at like executive pay. That can come. A lot of people want to criticize executive pay, but if you look at just alignment, if you look at somebody who drives a bucket truck, what is CPS Energy paying? What if Via could come over to CPS Energy and say, hey, you're driving a bucket truck at CPS Energy, you're only making that much. Hey, we'll pay you this much, right? And so we have to think about what is the market, right? And keep up with the market. And so I think that's one of the lenses that I'm applying and that I want to encourage everyone else to be thinking about as well. I also think about how trust is broken with CPS Energy in the community in a big way. I don't know how long it's been since CPS Energy's public approval has been as low as it has been in recent months. And so people are looking to be able to trust their utility. They're looking to be able to have faith that their utility is going to be able to keep the lights on during severe weather events. And they're looking to be insured. If part of that trust is knowing that you're getting a fair rate too. And so I'm looking at, how do we increase accountability and transparency with the utility that we own, right? And so that's been a concern of mine as well. And, interim CEO Rudy Garza and I, we've had several conversations about this. I've had some conversations with the board about that. And part of that is, what if we had an outside independent expert come in and study some of the operations of CPS Energy, do an organization-wide study. Let's look at operational efficiency. Let's look at potential cost savings. Let's look at corporate culture, because a lot of staff have left recently. And so that's cause for concern. In addition, CPS Energy, employees, about half of them are eligible for retirement in the next 5 years, right? And so how are we going to attract new talent to replace that staff? How are we going to retain the staff that we have, right? How are we going to make sure we keep them here? There's in terms of culture, how do we make sure that we're fostering a safe and positive work environment, but also a culture of innovation, right? Because there's so much new technology that's emerging that the electric utility business model is rapidly evolving. And how do we stay at the forefront of that, right? How do we make sure that because there's cost savings there of being at the forefront of the technology and not lagging behind it, right? And I'm looking at this in terms of, this isn't just one rate increase that's being proposed. There's 3 rate increases that are being proposed, right? There's one right now that the city council is going to be voting on tomorrow. And then there's another one 2 years from now that's being proposed of approximately 5.5%. And then there's another one proposed for 2 years later for about 5.5%, right? And so what I'm looking at is, what if we were able to do some kind of a study from outside independent experts, that could look at these operational efficiencies, that could look at corporate culture, that could look at management structure, that could look at executive compensation, and make sure that we're stabilizing the organization and creating a roadmap for success, for the new CEO to be able to have and with a strategic plan for over the next 2 years. And if they implement those recommendations, then hopefully that could reduce any potential future rate increases, right? So I'm looking at the long game, and I want to encourage people to look at that too. And I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Rudy Garza with those thoughts.
Well, a lot to unwrap in that, in that discussion. I'll say this, we got a lot of work to do, and it's going to happen one day at a time. I've been in this role for 2 months, and I hope you would agree with me, Councilman, that I work real hard to be accessible. When you reach out, I'm going to be responsive. And I think it starts with, the leadership team of CPS Energy actually being recognized as, residents of this community. I mean, we live here too. I'm a constituent, of a council member, and most of the 3,000 employees that work for CPS Energy are as well. And nobody cares more about the job that we do on a day in and day out basis than the 3,000 employees of CPS Energy that that leave their families at home, in the middle of the night when it's cold, when it's raining, when it's 100 degrees outside, to ensure that we get the service back on when there's a problem. So I can promise you that there are always opportunities to ensure that our culture is where it needs to be. But a lot of what you've seen in the media is not reflective of the average employee at CPS Energy. There are people make mistakes, and there have been leaders at CPS Energy who fall in that category. The leaders that I have today, that a lot of folks have left us, but we got a lot of great leaders here. And a lot of conversation about should we take a pay cut? To your point, every day I'm recruiting the people who are already here to stay, because it's been a pretty rough couple of years, and we need everybody that we have, because we're 400 people down. So I welcome all these accountability conversations, Councilman. I've talked to my leader over our supply chain. We're going to put an RFP together, try to get it out within the next 30 days to find a partner, independent partner who can go out and help us with this. I do think the things that we're talking about looking into do kind of roll into naturally a strategic plan that will chart us into the future and make sure that we're back on track. But I will also state that right before the February storm, we were the highest rated governmental entity in San Antonio. So it wasn't that long ago that we were at the top in terms of the job that our customers thought we did. We had a bad event, and certainly it was a statewide event, a national event for the central U.S. But the mayor put a committee for emergency preparedness together with 30 some odd recommendations that we have responded to. We've got action plans for, but guess what? Those requirements of us also come with the price tag that we're going to have to be responsive to in order to meet what the community has told us they want us to focus on. There are state guidelines, state standards that we're going to have to meet in the coming years that we estimate could be as much as $200 million of additional work we'll have to do on our power plants in the coming years to meet much more stringent standards for the worst type of winter storm, like we experienced in February. So I welcome the dialogue. I am working really hard to ensure that our leaders are thinking about accountability in the right way. I will never approve an expense report that's got things on it that even if they're within the policy, don't reflect the values of a publicly owned utility. I recognize that that's a gap. Our board has already asked us to do a full review and revise the guidelines to deal with that, to ensure that the organization, we reinforce the expectations that have already been there. So I think we are on the right track. I know there's a lot of work to do. I know our customers are upset with us, and they should be. But I promise you that the CPS Energy in January, when everybody thought we were doing a really great job, is the same CPS Energy that we have today. Got to get back on the right track. We got to work on that trust. But I promise you that we're going to do everything we can to get back there.
Thank you. And I want to acknowledge that I have seen an about face in CPS Energy, Rudy, since you did take over as interim CEO. And I've seen an elevated level of responsiveness and an openness to criticism and to be able to take our feedback. And so I appreciate that. I think, one thing that I'm really proud of that I worked on before I got into city council was help advocate with other members of the community for what is now the Rate Advisory Committee. And that committee is charged with two things. One is looking at rate structure. So not just what people pay, but how that rate is structured, and whether it's demand charges or base rate charges, or just any flat fee just for being connected. And how can that rate be structured also to promote conservation? How can that rate be structured to support the value of equity in our community? And a lot of people expected the Rate Advisory Committee to be able to weigh in and make recommendations on rate structure before CPS Energy came for approval of a rate increase. And the other thing that the rate advisory committee is tasked with doing is also looking at the energy generation asset portfolio of CPS Energy. How many coal plants do we have? How many natural gas plants do we have? How much do we have invested in nuclear power, wind, solar? Which of those power plants would we like to shut down? Which of those power plants are reaching their retirement age? And which ones do we replace? And when we replace them, what are we going to replace them with, right? And so I think a lot of people want to know, when will the Rate Advisory Committee, when can you commit to letting the Rate Advisory Committee be able to work through as a group these issues on the rate structure and on energy generation asset recommendations, and be able to bring those recommendations to CPS Energy's board?
Great question. Thank you, Councilman. When we put the Rate Advisory Committee together at the very beginning of 2021, we really, the board knew that there's going to be a lot of pressure, knowing we had to come in for a rate increase in 2021, that there was going to be a lot of pressure on the Rate Advisory Committee, to get caught up. And so originally, the intent was never for the Rate Advisory Committee to take a position on this rate increase. But, the minute that we actually, organized them and got them going, we knew that we were going to have to find a way to give the Rate Advisory Committee the information that they needed to provide some perspective. We spent a lot of time educating them in the early stages on just utility rates in general, our business, various aspects of the organization, because you got to have some baseline, for being able to provide a perspective. And there's a little frustration that we spent too much time presenting to them on various aspects of our business. But, I'm proud of the fact that we were able to get them, to the point where they could weigh in. They did, vote, 12-6 with 2 abstentions to support the base rate increase. They voted unanimously to support the regulatory asset creation. But Councilman, the next 12 months, we're already immediately pivoting to the generation resource plan conversation. I expect, and our board chair has expressed, he's working on a resolution to deal specifically with the future of the Spruce units. But we got to have a broad conversation about the entire, generation portfolio strategy over the long term. I expect that to happen probably in the next 3 to 6 months at the Rate Advisory Committee. And I'm hoping to be able to get, by the end of this calendar year, by December, I hope we're able to get, a broad generation plan to the board for consideration. And then at the same time, we'll be working on rate structures. We've already presented through Brattle, which is a consultant that we hired to help the Rate Advisory Committee with just information. Brattle has already presented different types of rate structures that could be considered for San Antonio to the Rate Advisory Committee. But now what they want us to do is go back in, update our cost of service study. We base our rates on a cost of service study. That cost of service study is probably around 5 years old, which is still relevant but they'd like to see that updated. And then once they know kind of what the cost model looks like, then we can start talking about allocation. And so that's probably maybe a little longer process than the generation planning discussion, but I do expect both conversations to happen over the course of this year. So, so you got, I mean, I'll commit to you here today, and I'll say this tomorrow. My goal is to get both of those issues, tied down and to the board by the end of this calendar year.
Thank you, Rudy. And, I was about to tell CPS Energy staff, I'm not seeing questions. So just wanted to make sure they're coming through. And now I see them all. So we had a question from Diane. Will CPS commit to an outside audit and prior to a rate increase, reviewing and incorporating the comments and recommendations of the rate adjustment committee? I think we mostly addressed that one already. I just wanted to hear from you about, Rudy, your feelings on that outside audit.
Yeah, we've already talked about that. The board has committed to doing it. I've got the team working on it. That audit really, again, as Cory said, that doesn't change the need today. We're prepared to move, and we need to move forward with this rate increase. It's a modest $73 million. I know there's an impact, but it's not the 10% where we started from. We've pared that back to really do a review of the next 2 years. And so what I'm hoping is we've got a history of avoiding rate increases when we think we're going to need them. So I do believe that the work that we will do on this review, could have a potential downward, impact on the next rate increase. But that work will be factored into our overall financial plan. And that's the important thing at the end of the day. But we have some financial pressures that we absolutely need to deal with today.
Thank you. So we got a question from Amy. In the last 6 years, my property taxes have doubled. In the last month alone, my nail salon, local restaurant, and hair salon have all raised their prices. At the same time, my salary hasn't increased at this pace. In fact, last year was the lowest bonus ever given by my company. Costs are increasing for all San Antonio residents, which diminishes our quality of life. Help us understand what CPS has done to lessen the impact to customers. What internal cost-cutting measures have you implemented? Have your employees and leadership gone year over year without increased salaries and lower bonuses?
So we have not issued bonuses, our incentive plan over the last 2 years. And that's just a fact. We suspended the IP program, when we were going into the pandemic, knowing that, we had to bear the same burden that the rest of our community was bearing in terms of the economic impact. Our employees did not get any kind of general wage, increase over those 2 years either. And our wage scale, workforce, did not get a general wage increase. They stepped up and they said, no, we're going to keep our wages the same. And, over the last year. And so our employees have stepped up and also contributed to, the cost savings that we needed. And I will also, mind you, the hiring freeze that we put into play, all that did was put additional, responsibility on those that are already here. I use this talking point all the time because it's something I'm really, really familiar with. I've got some designers that deal with new construction. And by the way, new construction has not slowed down, in the least. Over the last 2 years, construction just kept right on blowing, through. So I've got designers that have upwards of 200 jobs at a time that they're working on. That's just not sustainable, over the long term. Those are the people who are really, really capable that we'll end up losing because we're asking too much of them. And so, so that's why, the investment we're talking about in employees here isn't for my executive team. My executive team is, committed. They're here. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about hiring in operators that you have to pay whatever the market price is. We compete with AEP and, Centerpoint and, Pertinalis. I've lost executives to Pertinalis recently who are paying, a lot higher salaries than we are and have access to bonus structures that we don't hear anymore. But we got to compete for talent. And so, we pay whatever the market price is because guess what? We don't want to hire just people we can afford. We want the best and brightest to come to CPS Energy. That is always what's made us special. That's why our linemen are the best linemen in the country. You know what? I want our linemen to be the best linemen in the country because we rely on them to get our power back on. So, we're not going to skimp on, the type of talent we're hiring. So we've got to be fair. We always talk about trying to, bring good paying jobs to San Antonio. Well, guess what? CPS Energy is in an industry where you're going to have to pay good wages because we want the best and the brightest technical talent. So we've got to figure that out. And this investment in employees is all about the frontline workers. It is not about executives. And I just kind of wanted to reinforce that point.
Thank you. And, CPS Energy is our utility. I want CPS, not just our linemen, I want our utility to be the best utility in the nation. And I want us to be able to lead. And that's the broadest lens at which I approach, how I evaluate CPS Energy and what my vision is over here. We don't have any more questions that I'm seeing right now. I don't think I missed any, but if I did, submit it again. If you have a question that you haven't had a chance to submit, go ahead and do so now. We'll watch in the chat. I'll share that. Did you have something else you want to?
Well, I was going to just say this question has come up, and actually, Councilwoman Villagran asked me. She'll probably ask me this from the dais tomorrow. So I just want to make this point. Big question is, what happens if we don't get this rate increase? What happens if City Council votes no tomorrow? And there are a few things that are meaningful. Number one, again, I said every bit of this is to ensure that we keep our service levels to our customers and our community where they need to be. If we don't get this rate increase tomorrow, service levels will continue to decline. We're already seeing a decline in service levels. What customers are upset about that's happened this year, it becomes harder and harder for us to really invest in making our system as resilient as possible. What resiliency means is that's a utility's ability to bounce back when there's a major event that causes, widespread outages across the system. And by and large, CPS Energy has always been pretty resilient. February exposed some opportunities we have to get better. We have made a lot of those changes that we need to make in the short term, but we got other stuff that we need to do over the long term. So our ability to serve gets impacted. The revenue that we send to the city, it's important for the work that you do. Councilman, it gives you, budget, discretion to do good things like, build new sidewalks and fix roads and pay police and fire and, invest in your park system and libraries. And so we want to make sure that, the revenue come back to the city is you can count on it. Credit rating, it is almost a certainty that our credit rating will be impacted if we're not successful here. And if that happens, the credit rating for the city will also be impacted just because we represent such a large portion of city's revenue. So what that means is, the money that we're now sending in additional interest payments, to investors, wherever they are, in New York City, wherever, Chicago, we're sending money out of the community rather than investing back in our system. Those are dollars that today we're investing in our system that now will become a cost that go outside our city. And with respect to our computer system, we've gotten to a point where the computer system, being 22 years old, we've got a window over the next 5 years to really invest, to really figure out, what system are we going to replace it with and get that process started. If we don't do that, our current system won't be, serviced anymore by, vendors who keep it, running with duct tape and, Band-Aids. And so we got to get that system replaced because that is a service level issue. Our ability to communicate with our customers, to how the bills look, to our online manage my account system, all of those are run by our SAP system, and we got to get that system replaced. And the growth, our city has grown leaps and bounds over the last 8 years, and our development community, the real estate community, they expect CPS Energy to be there when they've got a project, and our ability to not delay, those projects from happening will become more and more challenging for us if we don't have the resources we need, to meet that growth. So those are all real impacts of what happens if we're not successful tomorrow.
Thank you. During Winter Storm Uri, I remember that I slept under 5 sheets and 8 blankets in my house. And I remember talking to my girlfriend at the time, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh my God, look at your breath. You can see your breath in the house." When what's typical of freezing weather. When you go outside and you see people's breath, you could see it in my house, in my living room. And, so people think sometimes about, what stuck out to me was Cory pointed out the technology upgrades, and you just touched on technology upgrades. And I think people want to know what kind of upgrades you've done so far because one of the things that we experienced was the critical circuits. There were certain circuits that could not be turned off. And so some of us disproportionately had our power turned off for a much longer time. Right. And so what have you done to divide up that circuit so you can if the state forces, because hopefully it won't be CPS Energy due to anything that CPS Energy does in the future, but if the state forces us to do rolling blackouts because the state has been poorly regulated and the state is not able to supply enough energy all across Texas, what have you done there? And, what have you done and what can you do in terms of using smart meters to better and leveraging that technology? And you said again, since 2000, we haven't updated it's the software that's what did you call it? That was the back?
Yeah, SAP, our SAP system.
Right. And so when you were doing that, when you were talking about that earlier, I went and I looked on my phone and I said, okay, what version of Microsoft Office was out? And it was the Office 2000, then came out Office XP, where we're 8 versions later on Microsoft Office. And so I want people to think about when you get behind, if you use Microsoft, if you're behind 2 or 3 versions, all the bugs that you start to experience, the way your computer starts to slow down, it crashes, things like that, right? All those challenges that you have. So right now, you're the equivalent of 8 versions behind on Microsoft Office when it comes to this kind of technology, just to put it in perspective. So I think people want some assurances. They want to hear, what have you done so far? And what more will you do if you get this rate increase to upgrade your technology?
Well, here's an example where leadership matters, Councilman. When I came to CPS Energy, we've gone through, probably 4 or 5 CIOs here at the company. It's just been a position that, we didn't have a real good strategy, for recruiting. We had some really smart people, but they were, more geared towards private sector, kind of companies. And so we finally brought in the right leader, Miss Vivian Bouet. She's brilliant. She's strategic. So we hired leaders under her who could put these type of projects together, and they put a comprehensive plan to get our SAP system upgraded. We've known we need to do this for a while, but without the right leadership, it's real difficult for a complex project like that to put together. So we're on the right track now. We've got a plan. This money will allow us to put out an RFP to select the system that we want to replace this with. It will require us to kind of revamp our processes to match a forward-looking system, not make the system match our outdated processes. And so we're looking at this holistically, and we're ready, to take on the change management that's going to be required. This investment that we're talking about here will not pay for that system. When we talk about coming back in 2 years, we think that system will cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million. I'm hoping it's less than that. But at the maximum, I think it's going to be that. So when we revamped our approach to this rate case, and talking to Ben Gorzel at the city, he's like, look, why don't we give you the money you need to go do the RFP process? And then when you get the results of that RFP process, come back and we'll talk about, what the rate impact is going to be and get that in the next rate increase. So that'll be one of the things that we'll have to come back to the city, over the next couple of years and talk about again. But we're trying to be thoughtful about not asking for anything more than we need. And we have the right leader in place to get this project off the ground and get it going. So I feel good about our plan. We just got to get funding to get going, and then come back and talk to the city about what it's going to cost us.
And Councilman, I'll add, the first part of your question was the example in your house, and I'll mention it again. The kind of near-term change we've done is add additional circuits that can be rotated during outages, about a third extra. to the community. So if we have such a large request like Uri, we won't be limited by the few circuits we had. We've kind of did a robust review of that. The second thing, though, in terms of investments, are the reclosers that I think Rudy mentioned earlier that help break up these long circuits into smaller bits. That is, I mean, there's $10 million a year for the next handful of years in the capital budget to make that investment as well, which will help our resiliency so that folks won't have that experience as well. So anyways, I just want to acknowledge that, from an investment perspective as well, that's some of what's being addressed.
Got it. And, Rudy, you said $300 million. I hate to even repeat that number for the software upgrade. I think I wouldn't be surprised if some of our viewers at home fell out of their chairs when you said that. It's hard for a lot of us to wrap our heads around that amount of money. And just to help us put it into perspective, can you tell us what is the annual budget for CPS Energy? And then also, where does CPS Energy's profits go? And, what kind of contributions are you making to the city, since the city owns CPS Energy?
That's a very comprehensive question, and I'll Cory, check my math here as I try to run through it. We bring in roughly 2.8 to 2.9 billion a year. Mind you, we are the largest municipally owned electric and gas utility in the country. We serve the 7th largest city in the country, and we may be in the top 5 here, in the next 5 years or so. We've got $12 billion in assets. 300 million. I mean, when you think about $300 million in the context of $12 billion, it's a sizable drop in the bucket, but every investment we make, it's a $100 billion investment. We build a new power plant, that's $1 billion investment. We replace a computer system that drives service to 1.2 million customers. That's those are hundreds of $millions worth of projects. So again, we've got 3,000 employees I'm responsible for. The assets of CPS Energy, which are community-owned assets, are servicing one of the largest cities in the country. And so I know 300 million sounds like a big number, and it is. But in the context of $12 billion of assets that we own, again, it's a marginal but important aspect of the investment we have to make to make our system go. If our computer system goes down, our vulnerability to cyber attacks goes down. We always talk about weather events. Any given day, blue sky, everything looking great. If a bad actor gets into our system because we have a vulnerability, because our technology is old and we can't protect ourselves, that can take us down for days, on end as well. And so, so you have to keep in mind, it's not just the threats of weather events that knock over a pole or cause problems on our outage. Technology, can make or break our ability to protect our infrastructure as well.
That's a good point. Utilities are critical national security infrastructure, right? So your software is not going to be something that you just go to Office Depot and buy off, or Best Buy and buy off the shelf, or just go online and get a subscription. So I think that might explain some of that scary price tag. I'm going to go back to questions here. I saw a few more come in. So I don't know, excuse me if I don't pronounce the name right. I believe it's Stefan. And, oh man, I gotta go down a bit. Okay, Stefan seems like he's a bit of an energy guru over here. He says the cold weather report issued by NERC evaluating Texas's response to the 2021 winter storm cited the unavailability of just-in-time resources like wind, solar, and natural gas as a leading factor which contributed to widespread system outages. With respect to the upcoming conversations concerning generation fleet, will there be an increased focus on capacity versus fuel economy? And do you want to explain the question a little too, maybe for put it in layman terms if you can?
Sure. Yeah. So, CPS Energy is generating power in every way that we can generate power here in the state of Texas. We own a percentage of, a sizable nuclear plant over, south of Houston. In Bay City, we certainly have coal. We shut an old coal unit down. The older of our coal units, it still had 15 years worth of life on it. The Dealey unit's down. We've got spruce And we have a number of natural gas plants, both old gas steam units and a newer combined cycle plant over towards Seguin. All of that represents base load. What base load is capacity that you can turn on or off based on the amount of power that your customers are using. We also have renewables, and we have landfill gas, which is a renewable resource. We've got wind. We're one of the largest purchasers of wind power in the state of Texas, and we are the largest purchaser of solar power in the state of Texas. We're the 5th largest purchaser of solar power in the country. So we literally, have a diversified portfolio that has served San Antonio well over the years. That's why our rates have been so low, because we haven't been overly dependent on any one resource. So the question really refers to, does it make sense to invest in additional renewables, or does it make sense to invest in additional, what we call firm capacity that you can turn on and off when you need it? And the answer is you really need both. What I'm hopeful is that we'll go through a process that talks about, okay, what's the right percentage of CPS Energy in terms of overall renewable capacity? Right now we're at 20%. We're moving towards 30% over the next, probably 5 years. Could we get to 40 or 50%? Of course we could. You got some communities who've gone 100% renewables, but they also have to buy power, in those, winter months when it's overcast and cold, wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining. You're going to have to either, buy power, you have power available for when your renewables aren't there. You're going to have to buy it on the open market. When you buy it on the open market, that means you're subject to whatever price volatility exists, like what happened in February. That there's risk associated with those, with that type of approach to serving your community. So I want to have a thoughtful I want our community, Mario, to have a thoughtful conversation about what the right mix is, because it's going to take both to ensure that our power is reliable, our power is also affordable, but that we're also paying attention to the environmental responsibility that we have to our community. All of those are important. And so you're going to need both, but certainly, we've got stakeholders, on one side that want us to go 100% renewable. We got stakeholders on the other side that don't want us to invest in 1 more megawatt worth of renewables, and we're going to have to find the right balance in there between all of those conversations.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I get every part of this question, and so excuse me, Stefan, if I'm misinterpreting this, but they're right after the storm, or even after as the storm was going on, there was a lot of misinformation being pushed out about renewable energy and blaming renewable energy for the failure to be able to keep lights on. And some of this was being pushed out by cheerleaders for the fossil fuel industry. And I want to be clear that every single type of energy source failed.
That is accurate, sir. Yes.
Yeah. One of our coal power plants one day was operating at 38%. That's the best we could get out of it, 38%. So that's the equivalent of, if you have a car that could do 70 miles an hour on the highway, on that day would only be able to do 26 miles per hour. Right? It was underperforming in a big way. We had that, all across the state. Every single energy source was not prepared, and that's a big part of what the challenge was, and it was and a big part a failure by the state to properly regulate.
Yeah, and what the federal report really said was that the natural gas industry, we got to have supply to pump fuel into our plants to be able to generate power. And that natural gas supply failed us. A lot of the supply froze over at the wellhead, and that's what drove the price to 16,000% of what it was just a week earlier. And so so what those federal reports have really been pretty critical about the supply chain on the fuel side, which I think is still somewhat vulnerable.
Thank you. I don't see any new questions coming in right now. If you do, how many minutes do we have left? 15 minutes left. Okay. I want I want to put a little bit more detail into some of this outside study that I've been calling for all the way since I started calling for this study since back when, right after getting into office, and when the city was looking at their fiscal year budget for 2022. And I've had the opportunity to actually reach out and have conversations with every single CPS Energy board member. I've had every existing board member, including the outgoing member, Ed Kelly, who's going to be term limited out at the end of this month, incoming CPS Energy board member, Francine Romero, who's going to be sworn in February, and even a long ago term limited CPS Energy board member who was able to provide a lot of the history here. And so I've been able to get a lot of input, and the input hasn't just been, hey, what do you think of the rate increase? What do it's been, what do you think that we need to do to make sure that we have the best utility in the nation? What do we, and that's where a lot of these conversations have been around. So when I talk about this outside study as a roadmap to success, it's not just a financial audit. It's not just looking at, it's not just looking at Cory's books, right? We're not just going to look at and say, well, did you pay too much for your furniture for your new headquarters? Or, oh, is somebody abusing their expense accounts? And a lot of people are, interested in, what's going on with the expense accounts. And we, that's something that we need to look at. But it goes far above and beyond that to operational efficiency, right? And I give a great example. Like a while back, I had an opportunity to look at some of the cities' fleets for their vehicles. And we were looking at, well, what opportunities are there to replace some of the retired box trucks, vans, heavy duty trucks that the city owns with electric vehicles that are coming out on the market. And we evaluated them. And when I looked at them, we saw, well, there might be a department that only uses their box truck 2 days a month. And there might be another a department that has a box truck and they only use it 4 days a month, right? And so why are these departments not sharing a box truck? So there's so many things that we can be looking at to look at, where can we find more operational efficiency? And I know that CPS Energy has looked within and found a lot of cost saving measures, but this is the opportunity to have a fresh pair of eyes on the situation and be able to find cost saving measures so that hopefully we can reduce or prevent future rate increases. But I think that in addition to that, having this outside study gives the public more confidence in the utility that they own, because they're able to see, okay, here's some outside experts and this is their evaluation here and here are their recommendations. And so they know that somebody else has taken a look who's an expert, and they've taken a look and they've been able to make recommendations on where we should go. And I think that it's additionally important right now because credit rating agencies are watching CPS Energy. They're watching what have they done? What are they promising to do? And they're looking at, is the board approving this rate increase? Is the city council approving this rate increase? And they're wondering, how stable of an organization and how reliable is CPS Energy when it comes to an investment, right? And so what's important to me is not the bondholders, right? I'm not thinking about the bondholders over our city of San Antonio residents, our ratepayers, right? But the issue is that if our interest rates go up, right, then we owe more. We have to pay out more on our debt, right? And who has to pay that? The ratepayers have to pay it. So it comes full circle. Yes, sir. Right? So that's why our credit rating is not important because I'm worried about some guys on Wall Street who hold all these bonds. It's important because if our interest rate goes up by 1% because we took a credit rating hit, we have $6 billion in debt. And so then we have to pay an additional $60 million a year, right, in interest. And we don't get anything additional for that, right? There's no added benefit there. And so I believe that this outside independent expert study will give confidence to the credit rating agencies when they see that and they see these public commitments, this public evaluation, these public commitments, and see the progress that you're making. When you go to your board of trustees every month and show them the progress you're making on implementing any recommendations in a strategic plan, that's going to give confidence, I believe, to these credit rating agencies to keep our interest rates low so that we're not wasting any of the ratepayers' money and we'll be able to return value.
Councilman, and Cory, please jump in here if if you got anything to add. I've worked in the private sector where we went through a bankruptcy once upon a time, and we were pretty much a junk bond status. I mean, we put money out there, we're paying high interest rates. The capital was really, really hard to come by, and it really choked the business in terms of the investments that we needed to make in our system at the time. And so, so CPS Energy is not in that boat. The fact is, you asked a question earlier, what do you do with the profits? Well, we really don't think about our revenue in terms of profits. Our customers, a combination of the revenue we earn from our customers and a bondholder's willingness to lend us money, to issue us debt, allows us to keep rates affordable. When we can borrow money at a low cost, that means we have to ask less, of investment from our ratepayers to be able to invest in our system. So we use a combination of our equity account and bondholder money, to fund our capital plan. Like the city's about to go out for a $1.2 billion, bond program. That's how the city does it. We fund our capital program, which is like our bond program, on an annual basis. And so when we get $1 in the door, we put 6% of that into our equity account, our reserve and replacement account. 14%, we service our debt. We pay our for our operation, our normal operations. City gets 14% up to 14% of their revenue. And then if there's anything left, we put that back into our equity account so that we can manage our ratios, accordingly. And because we're that diligent about our financial structure, the bondholders have a very high confidence that they're going to get their money back, based on whatever return that they expect out of us. So, and so the standard they hold us to is a standard that reflects a very low risk that they're going to get their return back. That's just the way that works. We're at a place right now with our bond rating where bondholders feel real good about, even through the last 2 years. Even with all the challenges, we have been put on negative outlook by a number of our rating agencies. One rating agency has downgraded us, but we still are borrowing money at a very, very favorable rate for our customers. That has a huge impact in our ability to keep rates low in San Antonio. So the bondholders are an important stakeholder in the process, because it's because of their confidence in our ability to do our jobs that they'll lend us money at a low rate. So it all kind of works together. The job that the management team does to manage the business, the confidence that they have in our management team, even with the departures that we've had, to be able to run the business, and our ability to go to our board and city council when we absolutely need support and ask for it, knowing that we have that we're going to do our jobs to give you the information you need to feel good about your vote. All of that factors into our overall bond rating. And so it is important, because the combination of what we gain from, what we get from our ratepayers and what we get from the financial markets allow us to serve our customers at an affordable price. Did I hit all those points?
You did. And I think I would just punctuate at the end with some numbers. So for the last 15 years, if you just go back in the last 15 years or so, the benefit of refinancing this debt that we've had over time, where we have existing debt, but we want to go back and refinance it at a lower rate. So over the last 15 years, we have refinanced close to $4 billion of debt, and we've come up with over $500 million in savings just from that. And if you're a customer watching, that's $500 million that did not have to get put into a rate increase over that time. So to your point, I mean, the the benefit to the rating agencies seeing everything we've done is important because of the value that we get, and that's just a real example with real numbers. That's meaningful.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I don't know if you all have any closing comments. I will say that I want to encourage everybody to be able to tune in if you want to watch how this vote goes tomorrow at 9 a.m. at City Hall. There's you'll be able to watch from the city's website. You can log in to the TVSA link. You can also follow it on Facebook through the City of San Antonio's municipal Facebook page, or we'll share it as well if you follow us on City Council District 1 on our Facebook page. I want to encourage you all to follow us there for other activities as well. But at the end of the day, I'm going to continue to listen to the community and hear the arguments my colleagues make tomorrow. But I look forward to the conversation, and I just want to pass it back to you all. Thank you.
Councilman, all I want to say is thank you for being here with us today. Conversations are always very challenging and robust with you. And so I appreciate the job you do for District 1. And, we'll be there tomorrow ready to have a conversation. So thank you. Appreciate your consideration.
And thank you as well, Councilman. We appreciate the dialogue and continue to look forward to working with you over the coming months. I know I'm new in my role, but I've appreciated the opportunity that I've had to dialogue with you.